Today, we are introducing a real case where a girl owes a debt to her boss, but chooses to pay it back using her body. It occurred in Kansas, USA. In 2012, 50-year-old Harold started his new relationship. He has had 3 failed marriages, and when he reaches middle age, he is more eager to have a stable family. Harold was serious about the relationship. In mid of the year, Harold told his girlfriend that he lived alone in his 5-bedroom villa and he wanted to rent out 2 rooms. In that way, he could help those young people in difficulty and also make full use of his house and earn a little money to cover his living expenses. He asks his girlfriend if she minds, because she might become the hostess of the house someday. The girlfriend laughed and said no problem. She thought it was a good thing. A month later, Harold asked his girlfriend if Sarah, an employee at his store, could be her first tenant. Sarah is 17 and her parents are fighting over a divorce. Sarah said she was insecure and desperately needed to find a stable place to live. At that time, Sarah is his temporary worker and she has been doing well. But since Sarah was young, Harold was worried that his girlfriend would have concerns. But the girlfriend did not object after hearing this, because Harold has always been a kind-hearted person. He ran 3 pizzerias in the local area. He's a good boss and takes special care of every employee. Now that Sarah is in trouble, Harold thinks that it is right for him to help her, which might also encourage her to work in his pizza store for a long time. A few days later, Sarah moved into Harold's home. Harold's girlfriend also carefully prepared some daily necessities for Sarah. She reminds Sarah that everyone's habits are different and that it will definitely take time for her and Harold to settle in. Harold is a bit of a clean freak and likes everything to be in order. Therefore, she reminds Sarah to pay attention and understand each other when using public areas such as kitchens and living rooms. Sarah smiled and nodded. She said that she liked the frankness and warmth there. After 8 days in, Sarah asked Harold if she could pay the rent later. It turns out she's applying for student loans, but got refused by banks, and she's still trying to figure out a way. Harold agreed to her request and offered to endorse Sarah's credit as a guarantor. In this way, Sarah can have her own credit card, free to manage her own finances while accumulating credit points. Harold has nothing to lose as long as Sarah works hard to repay the debt afterward. Sarah was very grateful for that. 2 weeks later, Sarah got her first credit card, and she was pretty excited. But like her peers, she likes to try all kinds of new things, such as cosmetics, clothes, or some luxuries. She seems to have bad management of her savings and bought a lot of things for herself at one time. She also bought some gifts for Harold. Harold was relieved after receiving it, but he still reminded Sarah that she should restrain herself from credit card overdrafts. Sarah responded by saying that it's fine for her to handle her financial pressure with her wages at the pizzeria. 5 weeks later, Harold asked Sarah if she could pay the first month's rent. Sarah was a little embarrassed. She discussed it with Harold, saying that she wanted to use her savings to do plastic surgery first. Her parents are divorced, and they both don't want to live with her because she thinks that she is not lovely enough. She even thinks that all those school girls with lower grades than her were pursued by the boys, but she was alone. With low self-esteem, she urgently needs to improve her image through cosmetic surgery. Harold understood her situation. For adolescent girls, appearance is what they care most about. If she can regain her self-confidence through surgery, it is fine for her to pay the rent later. Sarah thanks Harold in tears. 2 months after moving in, Harold received a bank notice. It turns out Sarah has overdrawn her credit card for her plastic surgery and various living expenses, and she has not paid back on time. According to the endorsement rules, the guarantor is responsible for the debt if Sarah, the cardholder, is insolvent. Harold was so angry that he found Sarah and told her that besides the rent, she had to pay for water, electricity, internet, food and beverages, and even toilet paper. Harold also reminds her that he allows her to pay the rent later, but it does not mean that she can waste money and satisfy her own desires without control. Sarah gets anxious because this is the first time she lived out of her family. She didn't know that the cost of living would be so high, but Harold told her that this was Sarah's last chance. He'll pay all the money up front for her, but Sarah has to work for him until she pays off the debt. Sarah agrees desperately. For the next month, Sarah seemed to have controlled her expenses, but she began to be unhappy. She always felt that Harold was staring at her all the time, and she couldn't breathe because of the debt. She even loses motivation to work because she thinks all her wages have to be paid back. What's more, every bill from the bank is more like a reminder. Harold even wrote down her expenses in his account book and showed it to Sarah just to motivate her by pressure. At the end of the month, Harold handed Sarah the bill, reminding her once again that it wasn't just the credit card overdraft that she needed to pay back, but also these daily expenses. He told her that he just rented a bedroom to her, which did not mean that he was obliged to take care of her like her father. Sarah was heartbroken when she saw the bill, and she became increasingly depressed. She started to hate everyone around her. At the same time, Harold lost his patience and became mean to her. Harold's girlfriend saw the change in tension, and she wanted to have a good talk with Harold to see if there was any way to solve their problems. But Harold refused, and he even broke up with his girlfriend because of this problem. He said that he had suffered a lot of pressure recently. He has to deal with the shop rent, employee wages, product quality, market competition, etc. He was tired. He didn't want to discuss anything about Sarah. His girlfriend was very angry when she saw her boyfriend become irrational because these were not his own problems, so she agreed to break up with him. 2 weeks later, when the pizza shop employees were all getting their paychecks, Sarah wasn't. Harold no longer pays her wages. He directly deducts the rent from her wages. Sarah angrily told him that she quit her job. Harold couldn't hold his anger anymore. He roared, asking her to pay her debts. Then he gave Sarah an updated statement, which showed that she owed him more than $10,000. No one knows what happened to Harold and Sarah afterward. On January 17, 2014, Harold didn't go to the pizza place for 3 days, and Sarah's father couldn't contact his daughter, so they called the police. When the police arrived at Harold's house and entered the room, the living room was empty, and a white mobile phone was placed on the dining table. The officer tried to dial Sarah's number, and the phone buzzed. In the corner of the bedroom, the detective saw a terrifying picture. Harold was lying lifeless on the ground. His hands and feet were bound, and his neck was broken. There was no sign of Sarah inside or outside the house, nor was Harold's car in the garage. It is uncertain whether Sarah ran away after committing the crime or the family was robbed and the murderer kidnapped Sarah away. So the detective decided that the top priority was to find Sarah and the car immediately. Harold's car was found on January 25, a week after police issued a nationwide search warrant. The vehicle was parked in Florida, 1,400 miles away. Sarah slept alone in the car with 2 loaded weapons beside her. Police also found more than $2,000 in cash, an axe, 2 knives, and a small amount of contraband in the vehicle. Sarah admits that she caused the tragedy and that she needs to find a lawyer because the happenings are not that simple. When the case went to trial in 2015, Sarah confided in more details. Sarah and Harold met 2 years before moving into his home. Sarah worked for Harold part-time. Harold was very friendly to her and invited her to his house, but she didn't accept it at that time. 2 years later, Sarah panicked when her parents abandoned her, and Harold's timely help gave her hope. He is not only her landlord, but also the boss of the place where she works. He is more like her adoptive father, an elder who can make her feel safe. Sarah would occasionally call Harold her father, and Harold would happily respond. But Sarah became confused when Harold asked her for rent someday. She doesn't realize that everything she has now needs to be repaid with money. She even thinks their relationship is more important than money because she considers Harold a father. Harold gave her a bill of $14,000, but of course, Sarah couldn't pay it and didn't know what to do with it. After Harold broke up with his girlfriend, he started drinking heavily and regretted his decision at the time. He felt he could never get his girlfriend's forgiveness again, so Harold took all his anger on Sarah. He felt that the appearance of Sarah disturbed his peaceful life, and he wanted to drive Sarah away. But he wouldn't do that because if Sarah went away, he would never get his money back. Of course, Sarah herself was terrified because she had nowhere else to go but there. She had sent text messages to her sister, but her sister said her baby needed care and there was no extra place for Sarah to live in their house. What's more, Sarah's biological parents also formed a new family after the divorce, and no one wanted to see her. So Sarah had to continue to live at Harold's house. Harold later provided Sarah with contraband, which he said would help Sarah forget her worries. Although Sarah didn't take it too much, these had made her addicted. Around 2013, Harold proposed that since Sarah couldn't pay her debts, she could use her body to pay them. He then got Sarah drunk, and they had sex. Sarah fell into great pain, but she couldn't resist because Harold had hinted that if she didn't cooperate, she had to move out. Sarah began to feel like she was Harold's sex doll, and when Harold was happy, she could get some rewards. But when he was unhappy, he would abuse Sarah. In 2014, 5 days before the crime, Sarah couldn't bear it and began to Google the way of how to get rid of Harold once and for all. She watched videos on YouTube. She found that the neck is the most vulnerable part, and she even bought a rabbit to experiment with. Harold saw the dead rabbit at that time, but he didn't know he would be Sarah's next target. On January 14, 2014, Sarah decided to end her suffering. She texted Harold, who was at work, asking when he would be home. Harold replied that he was very sorry for what happened last night, but they could have dinner together later that day. At dinner, Sarah gave Harold 4 beers. The first 3 were normal, but the 4th one was mixed with sleeping pills prepared in advance, and Harold gradually lost consciousness. Sarah tied him up as planned because she was afraid Harold would wake up and fight back. Afterward, she wrote the word freedom on the wall. After 11 days on the run, the officer found Sarah. Her lawyer claimed that Harold was responsible for Sarah's actions. Why would a man in his 50s accept a young woman? His original intentions are questionable. According to Sarah's statement, since she was a child, she was not loved by her parents. She was harassed by neighbors, who even burned her skin with cigarettes. All those traumatized her and caused her to suffer from stress disorder. Harold let her see hope, but he eventually took advantage of her. This completely pushed Sarah over the edge, so she no longer trusted anyone and suffered from severe depression and schizophrenia. Sarah had been on antidepressants for nearly 6 months before the incident. The psychologist also stated that according to Sarah's psychological test, Sarah suffered from intermittent personality split, and she had at least 4 personalities in her body. In the end, the one who took revenge and attacked Harold was a person named Alicia in her body. Sarah's father testified that the last time he received a text message from his daughter was 2 days before the incident, and the message content was pretty normal. So he believes that all this is caused by his daughter's mental problems. On September 4, 2015, the court convicted Sarah of first-degree murder, and she had to serve 50 years in prison because the court did not accept her so-called victimization experience, including being harassed by neighbors since childhood and later abused by Harold. There is no substantive evidence to support her claims, and Sarah had the opportunity to ask for help during the whole process. She could contact family and friends or call the police, but instead, she resorted to crime, which made the situation worse and eventually turned herself into a murderer. The whole tragedy also needs to reflect on the education of Sarah's biological family. When Sarah was very young, her mother did not send her to school, which led to Sarah's lack of education and social skills. Moreover, due to the discord between her parents and their quarreling all day, young Sarah mistakenly thought that Harold was her spiritual sustenance and her trustworthy and dependable father, so it was reasonable to use Harold's money. But that's all she thinks. Sarah's mother cried after hearing the verdict. Although she's not rich now, she's still willing to pay $40,000 in attorney's fees to try to get her daughter's sentence reduced. So far, all appeals have been dismissed, and the court still finds Sarah responsible for her actions. This is Horror Mysteries. Enjoy and subscribe to know more mysteries around the world.